Okay, so this is Sam Bankman-Fried, once hailed as a cryptocurrency genius. He was a big deal. He flew on private jets, hobnobbed with the who's who, and even met Bill Clinton. But we'll be honest, a few months ago we had no clue who this dude was. Sure, we've traded a few fractions of Bitcoin here and there, maybe tugged on the old blockchain once or twice, but we just don't live in his world. So what is it about this hyphenated huckster that demands our curiosity? You see, it's not just the fluffy hairdo that attracts our eyes. It isn't his former riches gone down in flames that pulls us closer. No, it's the weeks-long media tour Sam went on after the crash.
November 7th, that was sort of the transition day, and even just the start versus the end of November 7th, I felt fairly different.
It felt like a slow-motion, high-impact car crash was unfolding right before our eyes. And I know this is all allegedly and stuff, but I'll take a wild stab in the dark web and say this is absolutely criminal. Imagine for a moment having an infinite line of credit without even being required to post collateral. You're in a penthouse in the Bahamas with 9 of your best boink buddies, I guess. They're also your business partners. That part's confusing, but boy, are we gonna talk about it later. For right now, you're in this Bahamas penthouse and the world is your digital oyster. With a mere stroke or gesture on your tablet of choice, you could purchase literally everything you want. Another Maybach, if you please, Wadsworth. Boeing? I'll have 10, thank you. You're straight out of college, you look like you're 12, and you're the CEO of a company that's got a magic box that contains an infinite amount of digital dollars. You also love amphetamines. And you're incredibly awkward.
Hi. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
What would you do with that kind of power and wealth? What if you knew it was against the law and you were doing, not very much at all to cover it up? At any point, a grown-up could come along, take one look at your books, and what if they finally did? Then you'd be this girl, Caroline Ellison. Though chronologically she's a woman, you'd be forgiven for thinking she's in grade school, both physically and because of her life choices. And her best friend with benefits was Samuel Bankman-Fried. Call him Sam.
Hey, the guy you see next to me is the most generous billionaire in the world, and I found him.
Hi, my name is Sam, and this is my story.
Sam has crazy hair. Sam is vegan. Sam sleeps 5 hours a night. Sam lives in the Bahamas with 10 roommates.
He sounds like a great guy, and by all accounts, most people thought he was. He does seem nice, and that pulls you in. But if he's guilty of his charges, he may have pulled off one of the biggest frauds in history. Sam was a billionaire until sometime on November 8, 2022, when this happened. Sam Bankman-Fried, or just SBF, was the CEO of FTX until WTF happened to that corporation. Now a shell of a business, if there was any business to begin with, FTX was a trading platform for cryptocurrencies. Often referred to as crypto, it's a currency that exists only in the digital realm. There is no central location, and instead of banks verifying the transactions, they are transmitted securely through cryptography over the blockchain, which contains a record of these and are fully visible to the public. everyone can see everybody else's wallet and how much is transmitted in and out of that wallet. But because they're anonymous and encrypted, that's the only information we have. It's anonymous, so unless somebody talks, nobody knows nothing. But wow, do they talk and talk and talk. That's really why we're all here. You won't be learning the finer points of the economy here. At Absolutely Criminal, we're fascinated by odd people doing illegal things and then yammering on about them for some reason. Now, who does that remind me of? And we'll have links to episodes of other people doing just that at the end of this episode. Although we usually deal with murder and bloody crime scenes on this show, financial crimes can be just as devastating in the effect they have on people's lives. And it's important to remember that although we are having fun at a former billionaire's expense, not everyone who lost money could afford to replace it. Lured by flashy ads featuring Tom Brady, Larry David, and other A-list celebrities, some very common people got into crypto. Some were convinced to invest their life savings into crypto on FTX. As Sam likes to say, at the end of the day, one in particular, every single customer lost every binary buck in all accounts held by FTX. Millionaires, middle-classers, and paycheck-to-paycheckers alike lost their loot that was guaranteed in writing, presumably in many languages, to be there in their account at the end of the day. But for now, SBF has absolutely imploded and appears to have done something criminal. Having checked both those boxes, let's go. But first, we ask that if you enjoy Absolutely Criminal, please hit thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed and notified. Every view and subscription supports our channel, and there are many other ways, some where you can look pretty stylish. If you like the show, links are in the description. Now back to our story. Our subject in this presentation is the product of Joseph Bankman and Barbara Freed. Both are backing their boy, as we might expect parents to do, but they're kind of betting their whole lives on their son. More about that in a few minutes. Bankman is a law professor at Stanford University. Sam's dad was an employee at FTX for just under a year, but according to the Wall Street Journal, he was not directly involved in running the company. The Journal also reported that Bankman was advising his son as he prepared to testify before the House Financial Services Committee. He never could have imagined that just days later, his son would never make it to that fateful meeting. Sorry, habit. And Sam's fine. He was just in the pen. Thus the no-show at Capitol Hill. Anyway, the New York Times reported that he worked behind the scenes at FTX, introducing his son to powerful people and securing human connections. Since the collapse, he has postponed a scheduled Stanford class and has retained his own counsel. Barbara Freed retired from professing law at Stanford in September of 2022. She was a Harvard graduate in 1983 and won multiple awards for her teaching. Like her husband Joseph, her life has looped-a-looped in the last few weeks. The Times went on to say that as a result of the spectacle, she resigned as chairwoman of a Democratic political donor network. She reportedly had no role at FTX, and there are tons of rabbit holes you can wiggle down if you want to know more about the parents. Now, don't hate us. We can't quite put our finger on it, but there's something we need to address. SBF's parents really give us Chris and Roberta Laundrie vibes. If you remember, they are the parents of Brian Laundrie, who killed Gabby Petito, and most people believe the parental pair helped him slip out right under the cops' noses. Bankman-Fried's parents stuck close by him right up to his arrest in the Bahamas. There's just that certain creepy je ne sais quoi. Let us know in the comments whether or not you think we're completely crazy. Of course, the Laundries have not yet been charged with any crimes, and even though the Bankman-Fried union may appear similarly unholy, they have done nothing wrong that we know of. Please keep in mind that although SBF is a slow-motion train wreck, new info is coming out at blazing speed. We likely won't have the most up-to-date facts when the episode premieres, but what has happened up until now is permanent, and it's astonishing. When his parents got together, Sam ended up being one part Bankman and one part Freed, and somehow one part Sideshow Bob. With at least 2/3 of his genes coming from two real-life law professors, you'd think Sammy would have followed the rule. That rule? The first one? The big one? If we've learned nothing else from watching hours of interrogations on YouTube, it's that when it all hits the fan, you don't talk to the police. Well, technically he didn't talk to the police, but you know what I'm going for here, because the police back in the United States were very interested in what Sideshow Sam had to say, and they were listening to every word. Here's a word you don't see around very much. Commingle. It sounds right, but looks funny, so it's apparently acceptable to spell it like this. No matter how you spell it, you should never see it in a sentence anywhere near the words customer funds. Sam is accused of using the FTX trading platform as his personal piggy bank. Now he's facing charges of wire fraud, security fraud, and money laundering, just to name a few. At the time of this writing, he's slumming it in his parents' basement and wearing a tracking device. That's because his parents helped to secure a $250 million bond. This presumably involved putting up 10%, or $25 million, and he had to surrender his passport. According to the Wall Street Journal, Joseph and Barbara are telling their friends Sam's legal bills alone will wipe them out. But if he ever bolted, the financial fallout would probably have ramifications down the Bankman and Freed family trees for generations. We just hope the cops are keeping better track of him than those in the laundry case, who reportedly mistook Brian for his mother Roberta, because he was wearing a baseball cap when he walked right out the door and into eternity. Much like the concept of eternity, following the timeline and understanding some of the details of this incident is difficult and requires expert analysis. This is not that. However, we do need a cursory explanation of what happened to fully appreciate the grandeur of his media meltdown. And after our brief layman's explanation, you too will be able to run a multi-million-dollar business at least as well as Samuel Bankman-Fried. It involves primarily two companies, FTX and Alameda Research. The latter was helmed by our friend Caroline. From May to July of 2022, there were a myriad of crypto collapses amidst a wave of bankruptcies in the industry. Sam moved in to buy out a few of those companies because he's a good guy or whatever. Now it's suspected that was just to delay the inevitable and eventual collapse of his empire. On November 2, 2022, documents were leaked by someone at Alameda Research, the crypto hedge fund that was run by SBF's BFF, but in reality had Sam's DNA all over it. That's meant to be just a metaphor, but considering his wild and free lifestyle, hey, who knows? We don't judge, we criticize. But those leaked documents would allege that most of Alameda's holdings were in FTT tokens, a cryptocurrency. The only problem was that FTT was the proprietary token of FTX, and the companies just loaned each other money, according to reports. FTX's collateral for those loans was FTT tokens. That kind of financial system apparently can't sustain itself very long. Needless to say, this was worrying to investors in these companies, and the race was on to reclaim their virtual yet very real currency. Millions, then billions. Eventually, they ran out of digital dough to dole out, stiffing millions of creditors for over $1 billion. Their total liability was over $8 billion. Of course, it's more complicated than that, but that's basically all there was to it. No real record-keeping, wild nights with drugs, and consensual adult activities. All the money he wanted, and most people thought Sam was earning to give, wanting to make the world a better place. Sam and Miss Ellison were, in very many ways, intertwined way too deeply in each other's business. The two entities not only transacted together, they had direct access to one another's private information. However much you care about their polyamorous living situation, which we promise we'll attempt to explain next, you should be more concerned about their corporate commingling, including a lazy and very sloppy cover-up. Although the roller coaster crept over the edge on November 8th, the events that triggered the fall of crypto's golden boy unfolded over a couple of weeks. But in that sweet light of hindsight, FTX had been balancing on the precipice all along. Although valued in the billions, there was never really any there at all. And investigators discovered there was literally no record keeping. We thought we read the quote wrong, but here's the new FTX CEO John Ray III saying just that in front of God and Congress.
This one is unusual, and it's unusual in the sense that literally, there's no record keeping whatsoever. It's in the absence of record keeping. Employees would communicate, invoicing and expenses on Slack, which is, essentially a way of communicating for chat rooms. They use QuickBooks, a multi-billion-dollar company using QuickBooks. QuickBooks.
There are no internal controls, and Ray called it the worst corporate collapse he has seen in his complete 40-year career. And that's saying a lot. Mr. Ray presided over the autopsy of the Enron debacle in addition to a dozen other corporate catastrophes. I guess that's just his thing, but it sounds like the worst job in the world. Nevertheless, with the adults finally in charge, it turned out to be worse than they ever imagined. By Sam's own admissions, he should have paid more attention to FTX. Perhaps he was more concerned with his side ventures. Although the specific combinations, frequencies, and methods are unclear, CoinDesk reported that all 10 roommates banged all the others at various times. The same article quotes an anonymous source as saying they stayed up all night, snorting Adderall and playing poker, and all smelled like they hadn't showered in a week. No specific sleep schedule, just amphetamines when they needed to function, and sleeping pills whenever necessary. Kind of like Elvis and Johnny Cash did it back in the day. Let us know in the comments below if you think they'll get their deposit back on that promiscuous penthouse. Rock and roll, baby. So, Sam's grand apology tour began unofficially on November 16th, officially surfacing for the first time since the world found out. Communicating with a friend who he later said he forgot was a reporter for Vox, and the candid nature of the conversation lends credence to that claim. The so-called interview was a text conversation between the pair. Bankman-Fried basically admitted the altruism was a facade. When asked if he was merely saying the right things for appearances, he responded affirmatively, saying, "I had to be. It's what reputations are made of. I feel bad for those who get fucked by this dumb game we woke Westerners play when we say all the right shibboleths." What the f*** are shibboleths? And so everyone likes us. That sounds about right in today's cynical world. But even after the Vox article was published with those damning screenshots, he did not go into hiding. He was still in the Bahamas, tweeting up a storm. He appeared on media outlets, big and small, maybe thinking he could somehow rationalize his way out of what he's allegedly done. He sometimes looked like he hadn't slept, or perhaps showered in several days, and was shaking, talking quickly, and appeared nervous at most times.
But, to your point, my guess is that, the amount paid for BlockFi was probably bigger than the amount that Alameda had opened with it. I don't know that for sure. Again, but I wasn't even looking at what that number was, really.
But alas, on we watched. While there wasn't a coup from Caroline this whole time, soon it wouldn't take a fancy YouTube lawyer to figure out what she was up to, especially when she was spotted at this New York location on December 4th. If you don't know what she was doing and why she was strolling around nonchalantly in the Big Apple, stick around for a few more minutes and we'll fill you in. Meanwhile, Sam was still holed up in his Bahamas bunker, luxurious though it was. and he was still Zooming in more ways than one, talking to journalists, YouTubers, and bloggers, giving the same vague, circular responses. The United States Congress, even a tweeting Maxine Waters herself, invited and strongly encouraged him to testify. At first, he couldn't make the time to squeeze that in, apparently. Then he did offer to Zoom into the hearing, but as we know, that sworn testimony would never happen, because Bahamian authorities were moving in to arrest the crypto bro at the request of U.S. officials. He was reportedly playing video games at the time and looked frightened as he was led away into custody. So have you guessed by now what Caroline Ellison was doing in New York that day? Besides getting coffee, she was talking with Manhattan U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, seemingly to seal the fate of her former boyfriend and alleged partner in crime. She's already admitted to several crimes, along with another colleague, and 99% of legal experts seem to concur that Sam is enjoying his last days of freedom for a long, long time. Well, that's it for this tale that's still unraveling. Want more occasional financial and other crimes and Absolutely Criminal? Let us know in the comment section below. We will be back to murder next week, but until then, tell us what you think and let the darkness come alive. Now, as promised, more people doing illegal things and yammering all about it. Meet Sarah Boone, Linda Roberts, and Matthew Phelps. If you liked this one, you'll like those too. Plus, there's more dead people in them. Love ya!